How to speak English fluently in 2026. Graded reader, improve your English fluency checkmark. The night he decided not to give up, the city felt louder than ever, as if every sound was testing him, daring him to listen, daring him to understand. Rain slid down the glass of the bus shelter in thin silver lines, blurring the neon lights and turning the world into a trembling painting. His phone vibrated with another rejection email he could not fully read, and his hands shook as he closed his eyes and wondered how a language could feel heavier than hunger, heavier than loneliness, heavier than fear. In that moment, standing between the life he had left behind and the future he could barely imagine, he realized that learning to speak was not just about words. It was about survival, dignity, and the courage to be seen. If this story speaks to you, if you believe in kindness, growth, and second chances, take a moment right now to like the video, share it with someone who needs hope, comment your thoughts, and subscribe to the channel. Your support helps stories like this reach hearts that are still searching for light. He had arrived in the city years earlier with a small suitcase, a tired smile, and a belief that effort could fix anything. The year was moving quickly toward 2026, and the world was changing faster than he could follow. Screens talked back, machines predicted needs, and English wrapped itself around every opportunity like a gatekeeper. He knew the basics, the simple greetings and memorized phrases, but real life did not wait for perfect grammar. It moved fast, asked questions without slowing down, and judged silently when answers came too late or sounded wrong. Each day felt like walking through fog, where people's lips moved and meaning slipped away just before he could catch it. Work was the hardest. He took whatever he could find, jobs where instructions were short and patience was thin. His mistakes were rarely about skill, they were about understanding. A misunderstood schedule, a safety rule half heard, a form filled out wrong. Every error added weight to his chest, a quiet shame that followed him home at night. He practiced alone in his small room, reading graded readers meant for beginners, repeating sentences until they lost meaning, listening to recordings while the city slept. Sometimes he felt progress, small victories that warmed him from the inside. Other times, he felt stuck, as if the language was a wall that grew taller every time he tried to climb it. Loneliness made everything louder. Back home, his voice had been confident, full of jokes and stories. Here, it shrank. He avoided long conversations, nodded even when unsure, smiled to hide confusion. He missed being understood without effort. He missed being himself. On weekends, he walked through crowded streets, watching people talk freely, laughing, arguing, living inside a language that felt close to him. He wondered how many dreams had faded quietly because someone could not say what they meant. But change rarely arrives as a sudden miracle. It comes slowly, disguised as routine, disguised as persistence. One evening, exhausted and close to giving up, he stumbled upon an online video promising something simple and bold: how to speak English fluently in 2026, not through perfection but through connection. The idea felt almost too gentle for a world that had been so hard. The lessons were slow, clear, built like steps instead of walls. The stories inside them felt human, filled with ordinary struggles and small hopes. He began to listen not just with his ears, but with his heart. He started to understand that fluency was not about sounding like someone else. It was about being brave enough to use what he knew, even when it was broken. He practiced, thinking in English while walking, naming things he saw, describing feelings he usually hid. He learned that mistakes were not proof of failure, but proof of effort. Each new word became a tool, each sentence a bridge. The language slowly stopped feeling like an enemy and started to feel like a companion, sometimes difficult, sometimes kind, but always offering another chance. The city noticed before he did. A cashier waited patiently as he searched for words, and he finished the sentence without panic. A coworker asked about his day, and he answered with more than one line. The world did not end when he spoke imperfectly. In fact, it opened a little. He began to see that people were not judging as harshly as he had imagined. Many were simply busy, unaware of the battles hidden behind accents and pauses. When he allowed himself to be seen, even briefly, kindness found him. Still, the journey was far from easy. There were days when his confidence collapsed without warning. A fast conversation he could not follow, a joke he did not understand, a meeting where words flew like arrows. On those days, the old doubt returned, whispering that he would always be behind, always catching up. He learned to sit with that feeling instead of running from it. He reminded himself how far he had come, how many nights he had studied when no one was watching. Progress, he realized, was not a straight line. It was a series of returns, each time a little stronger. By 2026, the world spoke even faster, but he listened better. Technology helped, but it was his mindset that truly changed. He stopped waiting to be perfect before participating. He asked questions without apology. He shared opinions even when his sentences were simple. Something powerful happened when he did that. People leaned in. Conversations became exchanges instead of tests. His voice, once quiet and careful, gained weight and warmth. The greatest challenge came when he applied for a role that once felt impossible. The application asked for confidence, clarity, and communication. He almost closed the page, almost told himself it was too soon. But then he remembered the night at the bus shelter, the rain, the rejection, the decision not to give up. He filled out the form slowly, choosing words that felt honest. The interview was not flawless. He paused, corrected himself, breathed through the nerves. But he spoke with sincerity, and sincerity, he learned, carries its own fluency. Waiting for the result tested his patience more than any grammar rule ever had. In that waiting, he reflected on the journey, not just the language skills, but the person he had become. Learning English had taught him resilience, humility, and empathy. It had taught him how to listen deeply, how to find meaning beyond words. It had reshaped his future, not by erasing his past, but by giving it a voice. When the opportunity finally came, it felt less like a victory and more like a confirmation. He belonged in the room. Not because his English was perfect, but because his effort was real. He carried his story into every conversation, even when it remained unspoken. He became someone others turned to for help, for encouragement, for proof that progress was possible. In helping others learn, he learned even more himself. He began sharing his experience online, creating simple, graded stories for learners like him. Stories about fear, hope, mistakes, and growth. He knew that somewhere, someone was standing under a flickering light, wondering if they would ever be understood. He wanted them to know they were not alone. He wanted them to feel what he had felt when language stopped being a barrier and started being a bridge. If this story is touching your heart right now, if you feel seen or understood, please take a moment near the end of this video to like, comment, and share it. Your engagement helps this message reach others who are still struggling in silence, and it reminds them that their efforts matter. As the years moved forward, English became a part of his life, not as a trophy, but as a tool. He still made mistakes. He still learned new words every day. But the fear was gone. In its place was curiosity, confidence, and compassion for himself and others. He understood that fluency was not a destination reached once and forever. It was a living process, shaped by experience, courage, and connection. Just before the ending, take a second to comment below and share where you are on your own language journey, or simply write one word that describes how this story made you feel. The city still buzzed, rain still fell, and the world still moved fast. But now, when he closed his eyes, he no longer felt lost in the noise. He heard meaning, he felt belonging, and he knew that learning to speak had never really been about English at all. It had been about finding his voice, and realizing that it had been there all along, waiting for him to believe in it.